talk about radical human adaptation. Of course, we've talked a lot about the environment, major changes, just one of which is climate change, and we address more than that. Toxic dispersions, ecological damage of other kinds, plastic in the ocean. But behind all that is our inability to deal with this. And it's because of the way we think. And so we got to change how we think. That's a radical human adaptation. Compression thinking is a fair stab at trying to get us to think very differently. This problem has gone back to the beginning of what's popularly called the environmental movement with the Club of Rome report. Donell Meadows and Jay Forrester staked the future on politicians and business people actually responding to the evidence of the time and its projection in a computerized model. It hasn't worked. Most everybody that's not part of the environmental movement regards it politically as an attack on their system. And it is, because that system has to change. It has been leading us astray for a long time. And so even at that time there was an alternate path not taken. And it called it the predicament of mankind, not the problems or the perils of the environment. The predicament of mankind, recognizing that unless we fix us, we can't fix the environment. That sort of an undercurrent has persisted with the environmental movement ever since. It has not successfully broken through until maybe recently. And in just the last 2 weeks or so, the climate scientists have sort of emerged from their academic reticence to say this is serious, we have genuine problems, and the consequences are, among others, we have to change us. They've never before actually said that. And so I can imagine the political opposition really coming out in force. But they're right. What has to change? Well, number one, we have to think of pay-as-you-go, not a system like conventional investment where we'll go intervene in nature, conquer nature, do something, flip a piece of real estate, make money. What is that? That's extractive capitalism. It's inherently extractive. That's on the assumption that whatever we get out of this, the future will pay for the past investment. It's not a good way to think of it. If the present has to pay for the past and pay for the future in addition, you have a totally different world from the one that the system of business and investment envisions. That's a basic human value system change. I'm not sure where we go from here with it. I don't know how long or how difficult it might be for the business community to come around on this. But it changes your whole idea of what a work organization is. If it does something important, it may make money. It can do something very important and never make money in any conventional sense. That whole idea of things, of associating the two, is what has to go. And it's what I'd referred to in other areas as nature's business model. Centering the thinking on something other than finance. And the grand illusion, not just for the environment, but in business itself, is that you can think financially and control thereby a lot of other things going on. You can't. You're deceiving yourself because you forget what's really important in a business that has to do something important. An awful lot of the economy today is kind of a sham. It does not relate to food, clothing, shelter, the basics that are necessary for us to stay alive, especially in a world where we've messed it up with a lot of pollution and the climate may be changing rapidly, and we've got to learn very quickly how to adapt to this. That's radical adaptation. We're there now. Not sometime in the future, not when you make enough money, not when you get along in the world enough that you can relax and pay attention to that. This is urgent. And the climate scientists have come out. One of them named Bendel from England describes his idea of change as first resilience. That means you can snap back from whatever. Got to build up resilience. The second one is relinquishment, which means what can we give up in order to have the necessary things that we need. And there's an awful lot that we could relinquish. The third one is restoration, which means going back and borrowing from the past. What is in our nature? What is it that we have done, that we can do, that will help bail us out of this current predicament? And we do have things that we have done. One of them is just plain old cultivation of heritage seed. A lot of people have forgotten how to do that. We have forgotten how to do a lot of things that are necessary, hands-on, ground level, to keep us alive. A lot of that needs to be relearned. Learn how to be resourceful yourself where you are and work with other people to do it. And so all that boils down to what we've called 6 points of compression thinking. If we're going to exercise compression thinking, that means squeezing down on what we expect or demand. What do you really need versus what do you just want? This is a different way of thinking, and it's a different status system. Among old indigenous people, status was on what you knew, what you could do, what you did for the tribe. It wasn't on how much you had. And that's the difference. And we've done it before, we can do it again. But it all centers on something in another place we call nature's business model, using a reference point other than the conventional money, because that leads us astray. And so now all of this is, I'm sure, terribly radical to somebody that's a conventional business person. It completely turns the world upside down. You can't get there from here. You got to go someplace else to start. Where's that someplace else? Well, take a good look at what's really going on if you got a good pair of eyes, and you can see the die-off of life around you if you're just looking. You can see the extremes in weather increasing, all the fires and the floods and the heat. As he used to say, what are you going to believe? Your old business model or what you can see with your own eyes? And so it's time to wake up and go in a totally different direction. A few people have stopped talking and they're actually doing. And they may not have a very clear idea of where climate change may take us. Nobody really does. But they're going in a direction to adapt to it, and that's the idea. Most of those that are really doing something to develop a better economy for themselves begin with local self-help, co-ops, local gardens, sharing. This is the kind of economy that somebody on Wall Street would just consider to be kind of a trivial thing. Hey, wake up. Maybe it's not trivial. Maybe you too have to do that. And so this is the difference between an economy that provides for the necessities to stay alive and the one that celebrates a lot of extravagance to show status. If we really don't have much, status goes to somebody who can live pretty well and uses very, very little to do it. That's a wholly different idea. Could we do that? Sure we can, but making the change is tough. They would consider it politically as a challenge to their way of life. Well, they're right. It is a challenge to their way of life. And their way of life can't continue. So what are they going to do? And so we've got to get off of that and get to a different, much more nature-centered system of learning. That's buried in the 6 steps of compression thinking too. And we got to do it pretty quickly. Faster than most changes have ever happened in the history of mankind, because we like to drag our feet doing these things. Yeah, I drive a car. Yeah, I do this. My footprint's too big. Nearly everybody else's footprint's too big too. And we will not solve this as individuals kind of going our separate ways. We've got to coalesce into action programs. And where I know of programs that are really moving this direction, they tend to be community programs, people doing self-help, growing a lot of their own food, building or at least fixing up their own houses, doing for themselves, and reducing their footprint of living dramatically by doing it. That's do it. That's not sitting around talking about it and there's sweat involved in it. Doesn't mean they're working themselves to death. They may enjoy it. It's a matter of coming up with different things in life that you enjoy doing. And so we have to move that direction. It's here now. It's on us. We can't wait. The Compression Institute probably can't help you much, except maybe help change your thinking and your attitudes and your outlook on life. But from that has to come doing. Actually changing habits, behaving differently. And I struggle with that too. We all do. We're in this together. We can't change the world all by ourselves, but maybe you can change the world a little bit at a time, right where you are. And maybe we can change it a little bit at a time, right where we are. And together we'll have a major change in human thinking and a radical change in human adaptability. Please subscribe to us.